Great guest in studio right now. We're talking Pacific Northwest Salmon Center, and Tamara Cowles is in. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see all of you.
We've had some wonderful representatives from the Salmon Center in over the couple years, off and on talking about things. Most recently, Clayton David was on as he kind of was giving us a wrap-up of the Union River chum traps and just how important it is to have accurate counts and fresh, clean water that's easily accessible by the fish. And that's kind of one of the topics you want to talk about today, the knotweed and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we treat knotweed, which is an invasive plant, on 8 rivers and streams around Hood Canal. What happens is that plant tends to grow along the river banks, and it will outcompete all of our native plants. Pretty soon, it would be what they call a monoculture, meaning there was only one plant growing there. Nothing else can outgrow it. The reason it's really detrimental is a couple things. One is the way it spreads. In the river, just a small fragment, about 1 inch long, of roots going downstream can start a new plant. So as rivers are really dynamic, there's a lot of flooding and sediment movement at times, so it's able to spread quickly through a river. And the other reason is one that's really important to us and why we do it is because it drops its leaves, it's deciduous, and just like some of our other deciduous, say alder and cottonwood, and the bugs in the stream eat those leaves. Well, they won't eat knotweed, and salmon, they rely on those bugs. They eat those bugs. So that's where it plays into salmon. Salmon are really reliant on a lot of the macroinvertebrates, the small bugs in the stream, and at some point when that balance changes, and if that bug population were to drop off, then what will salmon eat? So it's really important for that. So we've just finished treating it and controlling it, and we have a lot of different landowners we work with. It's a pretty complex project, and it's hard for landowners to address it because it's really hard to get rid of. So that's a great avenue for us to help them.
You guys have really made a lot of inroads, as it were, dealing with the homeowners who have property along the tributaries there, because you guys got to get in and get deep into this thing and really try to remove it from the bulb almost, right? Otherwise,
from the root system,
it'll keep coming, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways you can get rid of invasive plants. Sometimes you could manually cut them. You might cover them with like a burlap or cardboard and try and stop them from growing up. But along a river, it's really hard to do something like that because the river could flood, and then a plant like that too also increases the amount of erosion. It's almost like a cycle that it keeps making itself spread farther downstream.
So that's a good selling point when you come to the homeowner and say, listen, we want to do this. It'll only help your the erosion, because that's a big problem too.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I feel really thankful, one, that we have so much participation, and two, that we can help people, because it is a little overwhelming if you have it. And it looks similar to bamboo with the stakes that it has, and it will grow so thick, and it's really it's labor intensive to get rid of it. It takes a while.
So I know that you guys have worked hard to get rid of it, and you're trying, and you're not 100%, and that's fine. So what happens though when you get the root system out? What do you try to replace that with, so there's the natural habitat come back?
So we do native plantings, and we through grant funding, the same funding that allows us to treat the knotweed, it also allows us to plant on people's lands where we've removed that. So we focus on native because that's what our wildlife needs. There's a couple of things that we really kind of prefer to do, which is we prefer conifers, because what happens in a stream is, you think about, there's log jams in the stream that slows the river down. It gives places of refuge for fish to hide in, and big pools and stuff like that. Well, if you have all deciduous trees that fall into a river and make those log jams, they break down pretty quickly. I think I read about 7 years for cottonwood and alder. It might be a little bit different than that number, but close to that. Where a conifer is anywhere from like 40 to 50 years that it takes for it to break down. So that's a lot longer time period. So it makes some stability in the river and keeps that. And unfortunately, some of our rivers in the past, some of our practices where we would take log jams out.
Yeah.
Even the state did until maybe the early 70s when they started to realize that that was not a good idea. And I think they did that because they thought that it would prevent flooding, but it actually probably does the opposite of that. It probably increases some of the flooding because the river starts moving much faster.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, it gets really channelized. So adding conifers is important. So like a landowner themselves, if they wanted to plant along the stream, you could think in terms of native closer to the stream, because some things become invasive, and we have a lot of plants that we don't know if they will in the future. Nurseries, we introduce new plants all the time.
And it's funny too, because the homeowners may not think that way. Like, they're thinking,
I just
this will
don't-
look
It'll
pretty
look
out
pretty,
here.
yeah.
But,
butterfly bush is a great
Oh, really?
example.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful plant. I had one myself, and up north on the Dungeness River, they had a huge problem with it, and it cost thousands and thousands of dollars to remove it. It got into the riverbed and moved through it. And then I did want to mention that there's a couple of other plants that we saw this year that we hadn't seen much of before. And one of them is yellow archangel, and it's a plant that a lot of times people will grow in a basket. And I think what may be happening is they'll take their yard clippings and then throw them out, and then it starts to spread.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you're using that one, please don't drop it near the stream.
Yeah, they'll drop it in the trash instead.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then there's another one too, which is spotted jewelweed, which was just listed by the state as a noxious weed. So that's a pretty new one, and the Skokomish Valley has it. We've seen it on the Union River. Little Quilcene up north has it, and about 2 years ago we didn't see it at all. So it's starting to really spread.
The opportunities for folks to get information on this are online at pnwsalmoncenter.org. Great place to start there, and then you'll have the opportunity to connect with great folks like Tamara here to talk more about how they can come out, look at your plot of land along the water, and see what they can do to help and more. Again, that pnwsalmoncenter.org.
help feed the fish out there instead of,
all sorts of good stuff.
killing the bugs on.
Well, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for
it's
inviting
nice
me.
to meet you.
Yeah,
Happy
yes, nice to meet
Thanksgiving,
you.
and
Yes.
we'll talk again before too long, all right?
Yep.